one of my things that I do online is I shout out mispronunciations of ingredients.
Yeah.
And there are people who will shout across the concourse, eggy or synonym. And it's so weird to hear that. Makes you really cock the head.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Have you ever eaten a prune whip pie? How about a pickled cheesecake? Well, B. Dylan Hollis absolutely has. The popular TikTok and YouTube creator has racked up millions and millions of views by baking his way through vintage cookbooks that fit his 3 W's: wacky, weird, and wonderful. Dylan is back with a new book, Baking Across America, which has him visiting dozens of states to track down recipes and stories from America's amazing baking past. We talk about the crazy travel that went into this unique book project and what he's been baking in his kitchen. We love catching up with one of the sharpest minds in the baking game. I hope you enjoy this episode. B. Dylan Hollis, welcome to This Is Taste. Great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Matt. Thank you for having me. It's a beautiful morning here.
It really is, and it's the morning of your release of your second book.
Yes, I know. I'm a bit buzzing. I'm a bit vibrating. It's, it comes at you. You look at it on the calendar, and then when it arrives, it hits you hard.
It's a beautiful book, and I really like it. It has a lot of journalistic integrity. We're going to get into it because your first book was a huge hit. I mean, like truly one of the biggest selling cookbooks of that year. I mean, it was amazing, and much credit to you, just having a real vision and really understanding cooking nostalgia and just really being smart with the way you develop recipes, thinking about history. What got you into history and baking?
It's one of those strange things because I don't really know, because as far back as I can remember, I've always been enthralled with it. I've always held on to the records that my grandparents had. I would play those. I would collect old things. I owe a lot to my mother because one of the first things, when you're a kid, you always there's one big thing that you want. I want a car one day. I want this one day. And I was obsessed with this vintage vacuum tube radio I saw on eBay. And, I was like 7. I was like, Mom, can you please get me this? And I convinced her, and that was one of the first things I had in my bedroom when I had a bedroom to myself, was an old vacuum tube radio. And of course, here I was listening to AM stations. I had no idea what they were talking about, but it got me interacting with old school things. And I kept collecting them. My first car was a 1963 Cadillac.
Yeah.
I named him Ernest after old country musician Ernest Tubb. And that's actually on the front of the book.
Yeah.
So I'd always surrounded myself with old things. There was something about them. They carried a weight, sort of an echo of yesteryear that I felt was cool, bringing that into the modern space.
Yeah.
And I had collected, like I said, books and stuff. And the COVID pandemic, as I always say, we tried new things. We ventured out. Some people learned all sorts of different things. Folks learned how to cook. Folks learned how to bake. And I did too, from old cookbooks, because that's what I had around.
Well, your obsession with music probably had something to do with it as well. You're a musician yourself, and you studied music. And tell me a little bit about in Bermuda growing up and how music and later baking kind of got into your life.
That's a great question because my country is a tourist destination. And back in the heyday in the 1950s and the 60s, Americans primarily would go to Bermuda and they would expect different things. They would expect music and, old school British Islander hospitality. So every hotel on the island had their own calypso band. My grandfather on my mother's side was a calypsonian. John White, he had a band called the Travelers, and I had his records, as a kid. It was so cool.
So cool.
Listening to your grandfather on a record. Oh, it was neat. But it was this old school music. And that's, of course, just like I mentioned with baking, that's how I got into music too. So I started playing these old tunes because I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who I dedicated my first book to, Peggy, who's still alive, 94.
Oh, beautiful.
And it was cool that I could play songs that she knew, and she would tell me, I said, Granny, what should I learn next? And she would list off all these old tunes, and I would learn them. And I don't know, it just got me seated in this old school. I'm an old soul. When I was when I was born, one of my aunts said, he's been here before.
It's like it's absolutely a time warp, but it makes a lot of sense. You're surrounded by these very vintage emblems of British culture and of tourism, and you're on an island, so you're not leaving a lot. So you're really surrounded by this culture, and you're also just very curious, obviously, as a young person. And honestly, it's really special that you've been able to translate it into baking. What is baking like for you growing up? Are you in the kitchen with your grandmother baking?
That's the interesting thing with what I do, insofar as I didn't truly bake until 2020.
Right.
We called it F&N in my high school, Work Academy. It's an old private school back on the island. And, you learn your basics, your how to cook, how to bake, and mix things together. So the first thing I ever baked, I think, was a lemon bread. It was a quick bread with Miss Ann Coakley, probably in 2008. And I did not interact with bakery much after that.
Yeah. So you decided around the pandemic that baking would become your focus. You're a musician, and then you became a baker. Let's back up a little bit and just let's reflect on your celebrity, because now you're big. I mean, I know in Wyoming you probably have people stopping in the streets, but when you travel the country, and this second book, Baking Across America, you went to 19 states and DC. What's it like for being Dylan on the street? I mean, you're very recognizable. What's it like? What's that been like for you?
It's hard to process, and it's always so strange because if you look at the genesis, the nexus where I started, it's me in a kitchen alone in the pandemic talking to my phone. And that was the case for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, school had gone online, life had gone indoors. So I wasn't out and about, never mind the fact that in Wyoming, there aren't many people to begin with.
Yeah.
So I remember through online fame, it was getting bigger and bigger, but you only ever see comments and shares and talks about it on browsers and on your phone. And that's how, DK, my publisher, got into things, and we wrote the book, as many did, online. And then all of a sudden came the time to release the book. And that was the first time since I had started that I was out in the world, out of, the black hole that is Wyoming, and I'm getting stopped. And I'm like, what is happening?
That's weird.
Because there was no gradual introduction of this. It was, okay, now I landed in New York, and bam, people are in the airport, which is strange because in New York, I feel like people walk about. No one really cares.
Yeah, New York doesn't really, you don't stop like celebrities. If you're a true New Yorker, you play it cool. Yeah, you're like, I don't want to, but no, I mean, you're in the airport. You're landing.
Yes.
Wow.
I remember it was I got a request for a picture for a missus and her kid, must have been 8, outside of like a Hudson News. And I was like, you must be mistaken. And it's strange because one of my things that I do online is I shout out mispronunciations of ingredients.
Yeah.
And there are people who will shout across the concourse, eggy or synonym. And it's so weird to hear that. Makes you really cock the head.
Yeah.
All that to say, it's super fulfilling that something that I enjoy to do, that is experimenting with old cookbooks on camera, I have so much fun. It is incredibly fulfilling that also brings other people some joy. Mm-hmm. That seems... I mean, what more could you ask for? It's very rewarding, something that isn't inherently complicated.
Yeah.
It's curiosity.
Yeah, and you write your recipes and you create your videos with such love and respect. And I think people feel that with you. Like, really, they do. They feel that you are playing by it honestly. And I think some creators, true or not, the perception is they're just doing it for the show. And you're not like that. I mean, that seems to be a little bit of your special sauce.
Because there's special sauce in these pages.
Yeah.
And it was a necessary approach from my end. As someone who is not well-versed in cookery, someone who is not trained who, doesn't know all the cool restaurants, someone who doesn't know how to properly laminate pastry.
Yeah.
How can I get into the cookery space respectfully, publicly, with due care? Well, you go back and you look at the wild and the wacky and the wonderful things that people haven't explored in modernity. Take my first recipe on TikTok, for example, and one of my first shorts, which was a pork cake from 1915, an old 5 Roses flour cookbook, a Canadian flour company. It was a fruit cake with a pound of pork in it.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to comment and say, "Oh, you made that pork cake wrong."
Right.
So you've got some liberty there.
Yeah.
You can show enthusiasm for something that you don't know too much about, and you can present that in a food sphere, but yeah, without all of the respect that's needed normally if I was to say, "Here's a spaghetti bolognese."
Yeah. Oh, I mean when you start tackling bolognese, you've got so many comments. Okay, let's go back to this. Let's go back to but with this pork cake.
Yes.
I mean, is it good? Because I have to ask, it doesn't sound traditional, but I'm going to be open-minded about a pound of pork in a sweet, in a dessert.
I like your approach.
Yes.
Because it was not inherently bad.
Good.
It was this sort of, back in the day, you would make your cakes if you didn't have butter, if you didn't have lard, if you didn't even have suet. You could get by with a pound of ground pork if it were relatively fatty as a replacement for the fat in your quick bread. So there are savory notes to it, which don't exactly play well.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where your olfactory senses seem to kick in before the taste.
Yeah.
So you can tell something's wrong.
I mean, a roasting pork is very iconic.
Yeah.
It's a very unique meat, right? A protein. It just it wafts through your house.
And it sure did.
Yeah.
It wafted throughout my house. It was one of those things where the smell worried you, but when everything came down, it was a fruit cake that frightfully presented naturally. It was risen. It was it was the right color. You couldn't see anything. And that was like, wow, okay. Are there more recipes that do things like this?
That's so cool. I love it. I love everything you're doing. I really mean it. It's really, really special. And, there's food science programs, there's food history programs, there's academics studying this stuff, and they're all wonderful too. I think you're taking in such a different approach using the source texts, but you're admitting that you're not a professionally trained pastry chef, and you're creating these kind of homages to these old recipes, and it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, on July 23rd, we are hosting quite an event at the Bell House in Brooklyn, and you can get your tickets now. Eliza and I will be joined on stage by some of the food world's most interesting figures, including Haley Catalano and Chuck Cruz, and the one and only Padma Lakshmi. We will talk about summer cooking and some of the big topics of the day. The event will also feature a live taping of Bon Appetit's Bake Club with Jesse Shepchek and Shilpa Uskokovic. That's Haley, Chuck, Shilpa, Jesse, and Padma, all appearing on the Bell House stage with Eliza and I. July 23rd is the date. Get your tickets at the Bell House website or the link in our show notes. I hope to see you there. Let's talk about the second book. Baking Yesteryear obviously was done at your home, and you're mining through this massive cookbook collection. You decide to do something that I really respect. You go on the road. You photograph the book on the road, which my own personal books, I do that myself, and I really like that approach. I think it really gives a lot of life to recipes that maybe aren't given in a studio setting. But Dylan, man, this was quite the journey that you went on. So tell me a little bit about when you were looking at the whole United States map and you're like, I need to cover the country and I need to go to these places. What's that like, the planning of this trip?
Almost insurmountable from the outset, because the United States, 'tis one country, but boy, is it like you have 50-odd countries, around. And they're so different. You look at Laramie, Wyoming, where I am, if you go 2 hours in either direction, you're in completely different biomes, completely different. You can start in the high mountains and then you'll be in a sun-drenched desert with completely different sensibilities. So we sort of zoomed out and we said, what are the distinct areas of the United States. And then instead of thinking of all of these states, you start thinking of, and this is sort of divorced from the idea of food. You start thinking about the Southwest. You start thinking about the Pacific Northeast. You start thinking about, the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
And then, the New England. So these identities begin to show up. And then you can tackle it from that space. You say, okay, I can't go to all of the desert states, but we can hit Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the capital of all the deserts?
Yeah.
And that's how we came to culture capitals. So, Palm Springs was a culture capital. Boston, Massachusetts was a culture capital.
Yeah.
Now, when you do these things, invariably you're going to miss some. You're going to miss some areas, but the idea was to capture the essence. And that's how we started. And we mapped them all out. And when we were photographing this book, man, we began in May and we didn't close up until August.
Wow. And you're on the road. Tell me a little bit about the traveling party. Like, what's it like? Are you flying city to city? Are you in a car driving around? I mean, again, 19 states plus DC. Most cookbooks just can't tackle that scope. And it's amazing that you're able to do this. I really love that you put in the work and it shows in the book. But what's the travel like? How are you, and are you going to restaurants and are you doing the research on the fly as you're visiting these cities?
A lot of the research, of course, had to be done beforehand. The recipe testing and all of these things had to be done beforehand because not only did we photograph the book, we baked the actual recipes on the road.
That's insane.
It was, and it caused a lot of stress, a lot of excitement. But to answer your question, let's take the first leg that we did was in the South. So me, a college friend of mine, Kaylee Stalder, who was a great baker, acted as my baking assistant. I wanted someone who knew me, knew my insanities, and knew my sort of non-standard way of approaching these things to help me with ingredients and help me prep these things. My editor, Alexander Rigby, and we had picked Mackenzie Smith Kelly as our photographer, a wonderful photographer based out of Texas. And that was the crew. So take this first trip. We all flew separately into Savannah. We rented a car. We met each other in the baggage claim. Kaylee had the list of ingredients for the recipes that we were making. There was a sorghum. We have a sorghum and honey pecan pie in the recipe, and a few others. But our first stop was a grocery store. We checked into this Airbnb. We got to work. And the next morning, we were slinging a pecan pie outside of Forsyth Park.
Yeah.
And then, we drove from Georgia right the way through all the states to New Orleans, Louisiana. I was in charge of parking a car in the French Quarter, which was perhaps one of the most stressful parts of the trip. But that was repeated on all the culture capitals.
Yeah.
Some required more work and more planning. For example, we photographed in Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park. Now, there's no Airbnbs there. So here I was baking recipes, putting them in a bloody suitcase, having to bear-proof them so that once we landed and we were walking to our photograph location, we weren't assaulted by wildlife and mammals. And then we would unpack everything and shoot and hope for gold. And I feel so lucky that we got some gold.
You really did. And just baking in real time in Airbnbs, in unfamiliar kitchens. I mean, that's its own book, how to bake in an Airbnb, because we've all checked into them and we're like, are these really the pans?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you deal with that? Like actually baking on the road?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there lied the necessity to pivot on the heel.
Yep.
We had, there were some Airbnbs that didn't have metal bowls, so our double boiler situation to make something like a boiled frosting for a fully assembled lane cake.
Yeah.
Here we were, I think we ended up using a glass bowl that was used to hold decorations on the coffee table.
Oh, yeah. I've done that. You just pick whatever's in the house.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you melted a spatula here and there and you had to apologize. It was stressful. I remember the gooey butter cake that we had to make. And I don't know if you've ever interacted with a really old electric oven that has...
I've rented in New York City, so absolutely yes, 100%.
But they have, as you know, they have a top element sometimes, which when it comes to baking, does some different things.
Yes, it does.
So I recall being astounded that we were able to completely burn a gooey butter cake in 7 minutes. It was like
record time.
It was like a broiler function from the start. I should have known because we turned it on, and the rest of the house's lights dimmed. It was a bit scary, but there's a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah,
and one of my favorite was we baked. Well, it isn't baked. We assembled. Do you know about the dirt cake?
Do I know about the dirt cake, my friend?
Of course.
I am from Michigan. So Dirt and Worms was like literally every one of my growing up, like I would say, functions, birthday parties. I mean, dirt cake is definitely part of my life. Yeah.
I should have known. Of course, being from Bermuda, I talked to my friends on the phone, and they said, "What are you talking about?
No,
is that like the mud pies you used to make as a kid?" I said, "No," but yeah, it's as you know, it's the layered puddings and cookie crumbs. But
do you put gummies in it too?
Oh, of course,
of course.
You have to state it optionally because in modern times people have their opinions.
Sure.
Although I don't think those people from the start would make a dirt cake.
We call it Dirt and Worms, actually.
Really?
That's the way we call it. Yeah, Dirt and Worms. Yeah.
I like that one better almost. For some reason, I found that the state of Missouri seems to pen a lot of the dirt cake recipes.
Yeah, totally.
But my favorite, to circle back, one of my favorite was we rented this sort of haunted mansion in Kansas City. It was built in 1900 by a cattle baron. It was called the Buyer's Mansion, and it was the 1900s, and it seemingly never left. And it was this big ornate parlor, big, huge sort of ornamentation and crown moldings. And here we were in this grand room, and we were just making dirt cakes in individual servings, and we shot that in this mansion. So here's this pretty like bureau. And then a little in one of those fancy cocktail glasses from the 1900s is this dirt cake with a gummy worm hanging out. It was so great,
so cool,
absurd, and I think there's fun in the absurd.
Oh yeah, you hammed it up a lot in the photography. There's some absurdity. It has a point of view. I mean, you're in D.C. and you're out to the Watergate Hotel and you're wearing like Nixon T-shirts. And what a fun photo shoot! Yeah. I love that. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about some distinctly American ingredients. At the beginning of the book, you make a list, and one of them is graham crackers, which I love that you focus on it. The other is Jell-O too. How did you think about these traditional American products, and what are some recipes that maybe use them in a cool way?
Graham crackers are one of my favorite things. Graham flour. Back in the day, Sylvester Graham, health reformist, he had the idea to make this, special type of it's a whole wheat flour, but just the milling process is different. Keeps a few more parts of that in the flour mix itself, and it lends itself to a very particularly old school flavor. And if you thumb through cookbooks from the 1900s and 1910s and 20s, they would call for graham flour almost as commonly as they would all-purpose or bleached. Mm-hmm. And that's what got me started on the path of what is this? Who's Graham? It was Sylvester, of course.
Yeah.
But graham crackers are very interesting because you see them so much in so many icebox pies in the U.S. I mean, even the key lime pie now, it's required. A lot of the no-bake pies are required. You can buy them pre-assembled. And they're not elsewhere.
Yeah.
In the UK, there's none of this. Back home, there's none of this. So in Bermuda, I grew up with this because we get a lot of stuff from the United States, even though everything is in kilometers and degrees centigrade. But I needed to open baking across America because a lot of the recipes in my first cookbook called for these things. And I got responses from folks in the UK and Australia saying, hi, I can't bake these.
Yeah.
Do you have any replacements? So, of course, you think of the key lime pie with graham crackers and then Jell-O. Now, here's a very interesting thing. Everywhere has unflavored gelatin crystals, but to have a pre-sweetened, stabilized gelatin mixture that serves as the base of almost the entirety of the 1960s and 1970s Midwestern no-bake cookery area, you can do so much with it.
Yeah.
In baking yesteryear, there is a cake flavored primarily with Jell-O. Not only the cake itself, but the frosting.
Yeah.
We called it the Color Vision cake.
Yeah.
And I mean,
great. I remember that. It's a wonderful recipe.
It's pink.
Yeah.
And there's utility there. Jell-O was not made for buttercream frostings.
No.
But it stops it from sort of deteriorating in heat. It colors it and it flavors it. Now, this is devoid of whatever you think of its health benefits. It's buttercream frosting from the beginning. But it's a really cool idea. And I think only in America could someone take something completely intended for something different and shove it into baking.
Yeah, I mean, you mind those community cookbooks and just like books from the mid-century, and you just see this innovation. And you really respect it. I do. I look at these recipes, and clearly there were people with a lot of time. You know, it was like pre-internet, so people had a lot of time in their kitchens. And obviously a culture where, women were not offered jobs. And there was a lot of times when women were in the kitchen cooking for families, but also women were there innovating and using Jell-O, using these industrial products in cool ways. And I think you give a lot of respect to the innovation when I think a lot of people kind of snark at some of these recipes and think it's like industrial and uncreative, but I would disagree.
I am so glad you brought that up because they are ingredients of convenience. Jell-O and graham crackers and Cool Whip.
Yep.
They are, yes, industrial. They are, yes, mass-produced. But as you touched on, they begin to free women from the kitchen in a time where that's where they were expected to be or whatnot. It gave more time to them. It gave more time for them to set their table and do as they want. And that's really cool because that comes from, it starts up from manufacturers to the grocery stores to getting it in the house and giving you more time. And you're right. I think it's correct to venerate that.
Love that we are aligned there because it's full of these, absolutely full of recipes with innovation in mind. So I love that. Let's move on and talk about the Black Magic Tomato Cake from New Jersey. Really, really interesting using tomatoes in a chocolate cake. Talk about the way you discovered this. And let's give Jersey some props. Love New Jersey. I love it. I think it's a wonderful state with great history. And a lot of like misperceptions about it. I'm a pro Jersey guy here.
Campbell's Soup Company right there in Camden.
Yep.
You think about whether it be, Warhol's paintings, Campbell's Soup is a fixture of America. And my interest in condensed soups came from Campbell's recipe advertisements from back in the day. I mean, you see the 1920s, the 1930s, these ingredient manufacturers would put out their own cookbooks, advertisements really in themselves, but it started as the secret ingredient to many spice cakes would be, your nutmeg, your cloves, your cinnamon, and then they would have a can of condensed tomato soup in there. And that's how the tomato soup cake came about. And that's the most well-known of the quirky soup recipes from yesteryear. But there, of course, were many others. And this Black Magic Tomato Cake was one of Campbell's. And it was a way to give high gloss, high moisture, fudginess to a chocolate cake.
Yeah.
And boy, yes, you can slightly taste tomato, but it's barely. And what it gives is far more than you would expect. It's more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I mean, you think about tomatoes full of glutamates, and it's offering this texture to the cake, similar like that a mayonnaise would have in a chocolate cake as well.
Yes.
And I think you're not overpowering with tomato. You're just adding they call it complexity. Some people use that word, and really you don't taste tomato. You taste chocolate, but it's like an amplified chocolate with the glutamates working, and it's a brilliant recipe, frankly.
It's really good. And would you call them like amplifiers?
Yeah.
You find in the ingredients of a lot of old school recipes, you would have lemon.
Yeah.
Where it had, the core taste had nothing to do with lemon. And the idea was that it would like boost the flavors of whatever else is in there. Is it sort of like salt, would you say?
It's like a citric acid, right? You add citric acid to some ingredients like a chocolate or some kind of a cream. And you're getting the brightness, but you're not getting the overpowering lemon. It's not like a lemon bar. It's like a chocolate cake on steroids in some ways.
Yeah.
So I think the food science of the era, and you touch on it, is really fascinating.
My question that I, of course, in 2020, whatever, we don't know. Would you say that it was primarily Campbell's trying to get as many bakers to use their condensed soups? Or do you actually think that they approached it from how you described, that it was a complex addition to a chocolate cake? What do you reckon?
If I'm going to speculate, I would say like you've got a room full of like white guys in suits smoking a lot of cigarettes. Who are literally like, let's sell more soup. But then you've got on the a test kitchen, possibly filled with women who are innovating and like kind of taking that remit from the suits, sell more tomato soup.
Yeah.
And they're like funded, obviously it's a major company, and they're figuring out ways to simply cook with more soup in unique ways. And then, of course, delivering on the promise, because if it's bad, it's not going to sell more soup. Yeah. But if it's great, you're going to be like word of mouth, no internet here. You're talking about like phoning up your friend, going to church, talking about these great recipes from Campbell's. I just envision like the innovation and giving respect to these food scientists and developers using these products creatively.
Yeah, I think you're right. It sort of started high up, and then a lot of work must have been put into it, because you're right. If it were bad, would it have survived? No.
Yeah, and the same with Cool Whip. Like, you've got this industrial product, but you can't just like put Cool Whip in a bowl and serve that as a dessert. No. You had to do something with it. And again, back to the innovation happening. And I'm going to speculate primarily women in those kitchens, brilliant people.
1966. I don't know, it changed American attitudes in the kitchen evermore.
Let's talk about the state of Michigan. A lot of pride there. You have 3 recipes. You could have just picked one like Wisconsin or one like Indiana, but you picked 3 from Michigan. Why, Dylan? Why do you focus on Michigan so much?
Michigan started a lot. I have this obsession with the Kellogg Company.
Yeah.
There were some wild people up there in Battle Creek, Michigan.
I grew up down the street in Kalamazoo.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you hear stories about the sanitarium?
Oh yeah, I love those stories. Great stuff. Yeah.
Cornflakes, one of the most well-known cereals, and cereals as a whole can be arguably traced to Michigan and the Kellogg brothers' work there. They were, like Sylvester Graham, health food reformists. They had some sort of madcap attitudes. Mm-hmm. But cereals in baked goods is another one of those really American things. So there's a recipe for cherry winks.
Love that.
In Baking Across America, which is only one of the many instances where cereals come into baked goods. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about even just Rice Krispie treats.
Yeah.
That can be traced to Michigan. Scotcheroos, that can be traced to Michigan.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on that. And then you have, I got obsessed purely by the name, but it was the Bumpy Cake.
Yeah.
From, the Sanders Confectionery Company, which I'm interested in that. It's a chocolate cake, and there's buttercream bumps there, and there's a veil of chocolate on top. So nothing quite too special. But it introduces that argument that texture plays a larger role in the reception of taste than you would expect.
Absolutely.
Because if you do it differently, even keep the same ingredients and same 3 sort of facets of that recipe, it's a completely different recipe.
Yeah.
So I went down this rabbit hole of, is really the way that you frost a cake changing the reception of it so much? Yes, it is. And people love the bumpy cake.
Yeah.
And then the Mackinac Island fudge, that started not as an interest in the fudge itself, which of course is very good. But Mackinac Island is fascinating to me because in the automobile mecca of Michigan, here is an island devoid of the automobile.
Yeah, yeah. Did you go up there?
No.
Yeah,
no,
you got to make it. Yeah, I figured one day you'll get up there. It's a pretty interesting place. Yeah.
I hear it's like stepping back in time.
Yeah, you would love it. Absolutely love Mackinac Island. Let's talk about closer to your home, the cowboy cookie, the Laramies.
Yes.
You had to obviously pay respect to Wyoming where you live. Tell us a little bit about that one.
I love graham cracker crumbs, and I came across a few recipes that started replacing a high ratio of the flour of a recipe with graham cracker crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that doesn't sound too complicated, but the taste it imparts is incredible to me, something so simple. You've got toastiness, you've got warmth, you've got whatever it is that makes graham crackers. You do it with anything else, and it's not a s'more, for example. There's something special there. But the Laramies are the take on the cowboy cookie where there's no oats, as you would have in a cowboy cookie, but there's this replacement with graham cracker crumbs. And I had made this recipe, this type of cookie, which I first called Sylvester's when I was making, after Sylvester Graham.
Yeah.
And it's a true recipe that I made sort of from the ground up. Of course, a cookie is a cookie. The ratio's there since time immemorial.
Yeah.
But I found that graham crackers, pecans, coconut, just a little touch of almond extract, which is a bit contrived, but it's good, created a really, really nice cookie. And I took a risk here because the cookie elicits the idea of a place I love so much to me.
Yeah.
So I had to include it. And really, it's a recipe for me, for my friends, and as an ode to Wyoming, even if other people don't see it as that. I wanted to put the stamp there because Wyoming means so much to me, and I wanted to, stamp it, so to speak, into history.
It's a great recipe. I can't wait to make it. There's so many stops. We could talk all day about America, but I really love your focus on Palm Springs. I love Palm Springs. It's a very special place to me, and you spend a lot of time there. And obviously, when thinking about these wonderful mid-century buildings and just a culture that's preserved in amber, it really aligns. But it's also just a fun place to hang out. What drew you to Palm Springs, and what was a recipe that you took from there?
Well, Palm Springs, as we started this conversation saying how much I'm in love with yesteryear and old school things. And there's no other place in the United States really that embodies that more than Palm Springs. I also really, really, really love the heat.
Yeah.
My favorite national park is Death Valley.
Yeah.
I have a picture of me by the temperature call out in Furnace Wells. It was 130. I went on a few hikes. I only passed out twice. It was great. But Palm Springs is, like you said, preserved in amber. You see the cars that I drive every day. They're, on the roads, and it's not just me. There's veneration of yesteryear and mid-century design. So that's a call for it. That's a reason to go there. My favorite fruit is the date.
Oh, wow.
I love it so much. And, you talk about old cookbooks. The date is everywhere.
Yeah.
So Palm Springs, the Coachella Valley as a whole, makes so many dates. It's ridiculous. And you can find these date candies, stuffed dates, date everything.
Yeah.
Quick bread cookies, macaroons. It's great. And the Mojave Nuggets is a recipe in Baking Across America, which is just ground dates and nuts and coconut and, a bit of almond flour there to give it body. It's not baked, and it's a confection that is natural, so to speak, and it's incredibly good. So I wanted to include something like that in Baking Across America. And we shot that in Palm Springs. It was like 110 degrees. We shot it at a cactus garden. We were all sweating, to high heavens. So that's a story there. And you'll find a lot of the recipes in California involve dates.
You were there in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I've been there in the summer, too. It's very different. Most people don't go there in the summer. Have you been? Do you know Billy Reed's at all? Did you ever go to this restaurant in Palm Springs? I have to plug it. I've talked about it on the show. It's this wonderful. I think it was started in the 60s, and their pie case is of legend. And it's Dylan. This is your spot.
Billy Reed.
Billy Reed's. It's right on East Palm Canyon. I love it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I'll link you up with it later.
Please do.
Well, this has been so much fun. We could talk all day. I love your work. I'm such a fan. On This Is Taste, we ask guests about their certain taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I am ready.
The best fruit.
Dates.
I mean, obviously, the worst vegetable.
Eggplant.
Yeah. Tough hang. Good one. What's your typical breakfast?
Oats.
Yeah. How do you do it?
It is just a bowl of oatmeal.
Yeah.
Water. I don't add anything else. Water, oats, as in no milk.
Yeah.
Cinnamon and a bit of brown sugar.
Yeah.
Easy.
Love it. Do you do overnight or do you do it, just cook it?
No, I don't do this overnight nonsense. I never understood overnight oats. It's just, I don't know. I'll start lobbing out expletives. I think it's the case that I just don't understand it, and we tend to not like things we don't understand.
Yeah, it's a little mushy.
So maybe I need to dive into it.
You might like it. I feel like you might be reformed. All right, big one for you. The best dessert.
Oh my goodness, it's like picking a favorite child. Chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything more impactful and wide-reaching than a chocolate chip cookie.
When you're craving fast food, where are you going?
McDonald's.
Yeah, man.
I know they don't make the fries the way they used to, but a salty, greasy, kind of wilted thing of fries, it's sometimes just what you crave.
Yeah.
It's like how I like burnt diner coffee.
Yeah.
That's been on the heat since 10 and it's now 3.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
Yeah. It puts you in a place, and it's great with pie. Pairs well with pie.
Does it really?
I love a burnt coffee and pie combination. You get the bitterness with the cream and great pie. I find that to be a perfect pairing.
Oh, it's giving like Twin Peaks vibes.
It really is. Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Hamilton, Bermuda.
Yeah.
I love fish cakes and fish.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, in Wyoming, it is impossible to find any good fish that's from the ocean.
Yeah.
You can find good freshwater fish. But sometimes I just want a fried cod cake.
Yeah.
Fried plantains. And some crab cakes.
Yeah.
I'm in heaven.
Beautiful food there. Incredible. Hope one day you write about it. I'd love to hear about Bermuda from your point of view. Very different from what you're doing now, but love to read that. Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Chicken Waldorf.
Oh, yeah. Great call.
A chicken Waldorf. I've been obsessed with it for quite some time now. And there's something about adding those grapes. I have to have it with raisins too.
Yeah, I like that.
Ooh.
What a great sandwich.
I love those strange combinations. If I might offer one last thing, and you can cut this if you like.
No, we ain't cutting it.
I love getting bagels in New York.
Yeah.
However, I'm not a New Yorker.
Uh-huh.
And I had to say, I got looked at the other day like I had 3 heads. Because I love a cinnamon raisin bagel.
Yeah.
I also like cream cheese with chives.
Oh, you went there.
I put the two together, and the volume of the entire establishment fell by about half. Is that a faux pas? I love it.
Are you kidding me? That's an amazing order. Because it brought you joy, but also, you're right. Your baking is about contrasts, and having an allium in cream cheese with the sweetness of a cinnamon raisin bagel. That's beautiful contrast, and that's what a lot of your baking's about.
Oh, you get it. You get
You
me.
get my endorsement.
Thank you.
Dylan Hollis, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Cheers. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanal and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.